This is Sul-hee, a very pretty girl in the class who is known for being cynical. She tells the protagonist to stop looking at her because it's scary. Chan-woo is the protagonist who is good at drawing and ends up not understanding anything. Sitting next to her, he asks what she's talking about. She sighs and tells him not to look at her again. Then Chan-woo says that she asked him to draw a picture of her and asks how he can do that without looking at her face. Sul-hee says that she also told him to draw her looking straight ahead. Continuing to draw, Chan-woo asks if this is how she asks others for favors, and says that he always thought she would look pretty with a side profile. He continues drawing while Sul-hee's ear turns red. Chan-woo says that now he's gonna draw her eyes and that to do that, she needs to look at him. The girl gets embarrassed and doesn't answer anything. The protagonist says that he has to draw her eyes. Asking her to look at him, Sul-hee tells the protagonist to just use his imagination. Gets up saying he needs to go to the bathroom. As she leaves, she slams the door really loud. Stretching, the protagonist asks why she made it so hard. Then someone calls out to the protagonist. A black-haired student is walking towards him. Twirling her hair, she asks if he's drawing again. He says yes, that he was drawing Sul-hee, and the student asks to take a look. Holding the drawing, she asks why he's drawing her, and he replies saying that he's drawing for Sul-hee's Instagram, and she promised him a sandwich in exchange for the drawing. Analyzing the drawing, the student doesn't say anything. She says the drawing is cool, but that Sul-hee doesn't look anything like the drawing. Shy, the protagonist, says he doesn't know, but that he thinks she's very pretty. Looking at him, the girl asks if he thinks Sul-hee is really pretty, and asks if he can draw her too and that she'll give him something better than a sandwich. Embarrassed, the protagonist questions in his thoughts what this something better would be and if it would be a McDonald's or a pizza. Then someone asks the black-haired student what she is doing there. It is Sul-hee who is disgusted and tells the student to get out of her chair now. Then two friends of the brunette student whose name is Yoonga arrive and question Sul-hee, who responds by saying that she was not talking to them and calls them losers. They get angry with the comment but do nothing. Yoonga says that there is no need to make noise. Arranging her chair, the student remembers something and tells Sul-hee that he did not know she had an Instagram, which makes her embarrassed, saying that if she wanted to flirt, there would be another way. Then Yoonga looks back. The protagonist said that he wanted to draw Sul-hee anyway and that she is giving him a sandwich. Then he calls out to her Sul-hee, who is still embarrassed, tells her not to stand still and that she needs to go over there so he can continue drawing her. Sul-hee then accepts, still embarrassed, walking towards the protagonist while wondering if he really needs to look at her eyes. Yoonga then calls her friends to leave. They are leaving while one of them warns that Sul-hee better watch what she says next time. Fixing her hair, Sul-hee calls out to the protagonist, asking if he is free after school. Sul-hee sweats and says it's too hot and that the protagonist shouldn't get close. Chan-woo then says he'll sit next to her. Sul-hee sighs and says she should just wear a skirt instead. She looks to the side, calling the protagonist to her side. Fixing her hair and embarrassed, she asks if he prefers girls wearing pants or skirts. Shocked, the protagonist says he's never thought about that subject. Sighing again, she tells him to forget about it. Embarrassed, the protagonist says he doesn't know about the others, but he thinks Sul-hee will look good in a skirt. She doesn't say anything and he questions why she's ignoring him again. Sul-hee is very embarrassed but is also happy with Chan-woo's comment. Then someone calls the protagonist. It's the student De-sul who is the class president who sweats a lot, and she asks to speak to the protagonist. He then says he was talking to Sul-hee. She says to De-sul leaves and her sweat stinks. De-sul tells her not to be like that and approaches the table, saying that the conversation won't take long. Then the protagonist agrees to talk to her, while Sul-hee looks at the situation a little worried, fixing her hair while looking at the floor desolate. She then gets up from the chair. Chan-woo asks where she is going, and again she slams the door hard. The protagonist wonders what happened to Sul-hee. She apologizes to De-sul and asks what she wanted to talk about. She greets him very much and starts talking, and asks the protagonist if he can stay after class. Then some time passes and Sul-hee is packing her backpack to leave. Chan-woo is worried and tries to talk to her. Irritated, Sul-hee looks at the protagonist with a deadly look. Completely scared, he turns to the other side and tells her to forget it. while she leaves and wonders what happened to her today. Then Desol arrives saying that she took a while because she had to talk to the teacher about something. The protagonist and Sulhi notice that Desol let her hair down, and she asks if he liked it and he says yes. Then he looks to the side and sees the door closed. He is without any reaction and does not know what to do. The next day at school, the protagonist is drawing a flower. Someone approaches Chanwoo's desk and he looks away. It's Desol who asks how things are going while fixing her hair. Chanwoo gets embarrassed and says that things are going well. He then says that she could have told him earlier that she needed his help with the decoration of the classroom. With a mischievous look, she asks why and also asks if he expected anything else. The protagonist says it's nothing with embarrassment. At the bus stop, Sulhi is using her cell phone while waiting for the bus. She then sighs at the situation. Thinking about the protagonist, she says that he's never been like that in front of her. A bus arrives and someone stands up. Meanwhile, he is rummaging through her bag and something catches her eye, and she realizes that she must have forgotten her wallet in the classroom while the bus leaves. Meanwhile, in the classroom, Desol is stretching. Squatting on the floor, she says that now they just need to put up the decorations he made. A little tired, he says that it didn't take long. He says that he's going to start cleaning and that in the meantime she can put the decorations on the board. Then she starts decorating the board and calls the protagonist by his name, asks if he also thinks she smells of sweat. Confused, he says no and that she smells nice. Fixing her hair, she then asks what he would do if his girlfriend sweated a lot. Then Chanwoo answers that he would carry lots of towels for her. Laughing, she asks if he's serious and that he really is funny. She then asks why Sulhi is so mean to him and says that Sulhi even said that she smells bad. She also says that she thinks she's better than everyone else while the protagonist just stays silent. At that moment, she asks what he thinks of Sulhi. At that moment, he answers that he thinks she's just being honest, and says that he likes that while Sulhi is outside from the classroom listening to the whole conversation. Chanwoo then says that they are done for today, and that if Desol has any problems with Sulhi, she should solve them with Sulhi. Then Desol thinks that maybe she went too far. The next day, inside the classroom, the embarrassed protagonist looks to the side. Then Sulhi arrives very embarrassed, wearing a skirt and pantyhose. They are both very embarrassed. Chanwoo says that she looks good and that she is much better than he expected. This makes Sulhi's ear red, and she calls him a pervert, and this makes him confused. Sulhi tells the protagonist that now they will have to watch a live performance and write a report, and he is bothered by having yet another task. Fixing her hair, Sulhi says that it would be very sad to go alone and asks Chanwoo if he doesn't agree. Then she starts to invite him, when suddenly Hyunwoo arrives, who is a popular and somewhat strange boy, and he asks Chanwoo if he heard the news that Woongjin and Wooyoung are going to a boxing match, and asks the protagonist if he wants to do the task as a pair with him, saying that there are some girls who also want to go and that it will be a double date. He catches the attention of the popular boy, and he says that she seems grumpy as always. Very irritated, she asks if he can talk somewhere else. Scared and away from her, the boy asks Chanwoo if he is coming. Meanwhile, Sulhi is stressed because the popular boy ruined her whole mood, so the protagonist calls her and asks if they can't go together since there's no one else. Embarrassed and confused, she accepts. After a while that night, Sulhi is trying on some clothes in front of her mirror, sighing because she has nothing to wear, wondering if she should have asked Chanwoo what he likes, but that would be too obvious. Suddenly Sulhwa, who is Sulhi's smart sister, comes into the room and asks what's that sigh. Sulhi, annoyed, tells her to leave her alone. Acting like a psychic, her sister asks if she's going out with the guy who drew her, and he, surprised, says it's not a date, saying that she is going out with him but that it's not a date, and her sister says that doesn't make sense. Sulhi is looking at the drawing the protagonist made, and her sister tells her to let her help choose the clothes, and that she had a different boyfriend than Sulhi, or rather, she has experience in this kind of thing. So her sister starts talking to Sulhi about her dressing and that she should look at how others dress. The next day, the protagonist is shocked to have realized that maybe this is in fact a date, and thinks that he really wants to see Sulhi wearing something other than a school uniform. So he arrives at his building, and Sulhi asks if he waited too long. Arriving at the protagonist wearing a pink skirt and black blouse, she apologizes for being late and tells them to go. Reversing the lines, the protagonist thinks okay and says that she looks beautiful. She gets embarrassed asking what, and the protagonist realizes that she said it out loud. She says thank you and he tells them to go. Leaving the building, they go to a theater where a music concert is taking place. They are both paying close attention to the violinist. After that, the protagonist accompanies Sulhee to the front of her house and she says that the violin was fantastic. She thanks him for accompanying her home and says that have to go now, and they say goodbye. Then the protagonist leaves embarrassed. He arrives home tired and lies down on his bed, thinking that he should write that report. But soon his face turns red, remembering the meeting with Sulhee, and saying that he doesn't even remember the concert. When Sulhee arrives home, she wonders why she talked so much, and her sister asks how the meeting went. Suddenly someone slaps the table. It's Sul, who announces that spring is ending, and that sports day is coming. In the classroom, one of the students is very scared by someone's aura. This is Woong Jin, a wrestling champion who is very excited for the fight. From afar, the protagonist sees her and says that it looks like she's going to win this year too. At that moment, that popular boy arrives telling the protagonist that it doesn't matter, asking if he knows Soare, who is a student who transferred last year. Chanwoo says yes because they are in the same class. Then the popular boy explains if he heard what she said when she introduced herself. Soare introduces herself saying that she signed up to participate in the relay. She is a silver medalist in the national competitions. Impressed, the protagonist asks if this is serious, and the popular boy asks if he has Instagram to show him something. Opening Instagram on his cell phone, he shows a photo of Soare at the national championship and a picture of her receiving the medal. Then impressed and embarrassed, Chanwoo says she's really cool. At that moment, someone calls the popular girl Hyunwoo. It's Sulhee who gets angry with him, showing this to Chanwoo and calls him a damn pervert. Scared, Hyunwoo tells Chanwoo that she'll see him later. Jealous, Sulhee asks the protagonist how he can. He gets confused and wonders if he did something wrong. Then Sulhee remembers the compliment Chanwoo gave her during the date and tells him not to talk to someone like that popular boy. Chanwoo asks what that means, and Sulhee says she doesn't know. Something catches Sulhee's attention, wondering how he can be so loud while sleeping. Hyunwoo says he knows how to wake him up. He starts calling Kyungmin, who is the boy who is sleeping, saying it's time for physical education, and he promptly gets up. Then Sul asks if he's interested in any of the events. Kyungmin is a kickboxing champion, and he tells her to sign him up for everything. Then the wrestling champion says that's the spirit. Irritated, he wonders if it's really physical education, and starts to sleep again. Chanwoo wonders if he fell asleep again. Then they decide who will participate in what, and in the three-legged race, Chanwoo, Sulhee, and 4 other students from the class will participate. Sulhee and Chanwoo are surprised by this, wondering what happened. So we arrived at sports day. Sulhee is wearing her sports outfit while drinking water. The popular boy says that Chanwoo did a good job, and the protagonist thanks him and asks for water. While wiping his sweat, someone offers him water. It is Sulhee's water, who embarrassedly offers it to the protagonist. Very sweaty, he thanks him for the kindness. Sulhee embarrassedly tells him not to put his mouth on the bottle, but he is already drinking it because he was very thirsty, looking intently at the protagonist while he drinks, saying that only she drank from that bottle. The popular boy asks for water, and the protagonist gives it to him, leaving Sulhee in shock. She quickly looks at the situation and knows she has to do something, so she grabs the popular boy's arm tightly and punches him with the palm of her hand straight to his chin, telling him not to dare. The popular boy then gets on his knees on the floor, and the students comment on her having made a perfect punch. At that moment, it is announced that the three-legged relay will start. Then the kickboxing champion asks if Hyunwoo isn't competing too. The protagonist tries to wake up Hyunwoo, who is still kneeling, shouting his name for him to get up. A while later, already in the race, the first pair is Sulhee and Chanwoo, who asks if the bracelet isn't too tight. Following the second pair, which is the running champion and the kickboxing champion, that is, the 2 athletes of the group. But we also have problematic pairs like this one who are at a clear disadvantage. Yong-ah is acting as a cheerleader and comments on the reason why Hyunwoo's pair is last and Soare's pair, who are the athletes, are in second. Sol responds by saying that Hyunwoo's pair is in last to buy time for him to wake up. At that moment, the judge prepares to start the race. Chanwoo says that the gun can be a little noisy and that she doesn't need to scare. Sulhee says yes, but realizes that the protagonist is also nervous like her. Then the race starts and the pairs start running. The protagonist realizes how difficult it is to run in pairs without him holding her the right way while Sulhee is holding Chanwoo's shirt. At that moment, Chanwoo calls out to Sulhee and asks if he can hold her waist. She says he can do it now and he holds her. Then they start to pick up the pace. Waiting for the two are the athletes. Happy that they are not the last ones, they are getting closer. While the kickboxing athlete prepares to take the baton. Then they hand the baton to the next pair. At that moment, the two athletes prepare to run, taking off with great enthusiasm and making the cheerleader cheer a lot for them. Focused, they start the race, and the other team's duo already notices them approaching. They quickly overtake them, while the last duo still has the popular one unconscious. Then someone makes fun of them. It's Flash and Dash, who are the last duo from the electronics class. Irritated, the student from the design class says that he has a very big mouth, and that he's going to show him. Meanwhile, Sulhee and Chanwoo are impressed with the speed of the duos. Approaching the last duo, they say that they did everything they could, but that it won't be easy. The wrestling champion says that it's going to be one-sided and that they just need to watch, punching the popular one in the head, and leaving the second duo without reaction, wondering if she's going to do it alone. Then the cheerleader asks if she can run like that and if it's not against the rules. Hyukjong from the student council says that she still has Hyunwoo tied to her leg, so it's okay, and that this is even better because Woongjin is basically running alone without needing to synchronize with her partner, and that this gives her an advantage to win. She starts cheering for Woongjin. Woongjin is getting closer to the finish line. At this point, Flash from the other class asks if she's using a hack, and says that they won't win. They are both tied near the finish line. At this point, Woongjin prepares for something, kicking his partner very hard, being thrown straight towards the finish line, falling hard on the ground while they announce that the winning class is the design class, which is the protagonist's class. The cheerleader asks how this happened, and Woongjin celebrates with all his might. The protagonist and Sulhee look at each other in relief, and soon see their faces to opposite sides. He says she did well. Sulhee says he did too. Raising her hand, Sulhee catches Chanwoo's attention, and the two go to touch their palms. One day later, the protagonist is in bad shape in class, telling Sulhee that he must have overworked himself on yesterday's test. She asks how weak he is. Sulhee tells the teacher that Chanwoo is not well, and if she can take him to the infirmary, and the teacher says yes. Then she tells Chanwoo to go and he says he is fine. Grabbing him by the scruff of the neck, she tells him to be quiet and go quickly. While they argue, the popular guy analyzes the situation and asks Yong-ah if she would do this for him if she were sick. She asks if he is crazy and says that she would also be at risk of getting sick. He says that this was rude, and Yong-ah confirms, saying that she is jealous of the protagonist. Already in the school infirmary, there is Songhwa from the comics club. This is Yumi, the school infirmary, who tells Songhwa that she just fell. Songhwa awkwardly says she knows she likes to see her. Yumi says that since she's a nurse, it's better not to see anyone. At that moment, Sulhee arrives carrying the protagonist and saying that he has a cold. The nurse says she can take care of it and asks her to leave Chanwoo in bed. Then Sulhee carefully leaves the protagonist on the bed. Yumi asks about his symptoms. Sulhee says that he sweated a lot yesterday from sports day and that this may have caused the cold, in addition to the fact that he's had a fever since morning, and the nurse says that this was very detailed. Songhwa hears a voice and recognizes it. Opening the curtains in her room, the nurse asks Sulhee what his name is. Sulhee says it's Chanwoo, and then turns to the side and sees Songhwa on top of the protagonist taking care of him. Uncomfortable, she asks the girl to take her hands off him, and Songhwa asks who she is. Sulhee says that I was going to ask the same thing and asks how she knows Chanwoo. She answers that they are in the same club. Annoyed, The nurse says that she only has 2 beds in the ward and that they should be quiet or they will have to share a bed. At that moment, Songhwa takes her hand away. The nurse says that she will do something about the fever first. She gives Sul-hee something and tells her to give it to the protagonist, and she gets confused. Also confused, the nurse asks if she is not his girlfriend. Sul-hee, burning with shame, does not quite understand what to say. Behind the nurse, Songhwa says that he does not have a girlfriend, and the nurse says that she does not need to shout. Then Sul-hee asks if it is enough for him to take this pill. The nurse says yes, and that they will test it to see if it reduces the fever, and that she will write a note so that she can leave early and take him home. Sul-hee asks if she has to do this too and accepts. Then Songhwa says that she will take him home, and the nurse won't let them, and they all start arguing. Meanwhile, the protagonist is lying down thinking about how noisy it is. The protagonist is lying down burning with fever. Sul-hee comes to him and tells him to take this medicine and thinks she has never seen him like this. Tired, the protagonist looks at Sul-hee and starts to get up from the bed, saying he can take it on his own. Then Sul-hee says the nurse said otherwise and apologizes. The protagonist reluctantly accepts even though he wants it deep down. She tells them to wait a minute while she opens the package. With the medicine in her hand, she tells Chan-woo to open his mouth. He opens his mouth while she takes the medicine to him. Embarrassed, she says that it is like that and that he should drink some water, and meanwhile in her thoughts she questions what this feeling is that she is feeling. Sul-hee tells the protagonist to drink a little more to get better. After that, he sighs a little tiredly, telling her to at least let him breathe. Then Sul-hee says he is so weak and thinks she wants to tease him a little more. Sul-hee asks the nurse if she has any more pills, and she tells her to get her note signed by the teacher and leave. So she goes to her teacher and gets the note. Arriving at the infirmary, she says that she also got Chan-woo's bag, who thanks her, and the nurse says that it was quick. Chan-woo says that they are leaving now, and the nurse says that if he is not well tomorrow, he should go to the doctor. The girl from before asks if they have already left, and the nurse says yes. She questions how the nurse can do that since she promised that she would help her with the guy she likes, and the nurse didn't realize that it was the protagonist, which makes the girl say that she is not surprised that she is still single. Irritated by this, the nurse asks if she wants to have her other leg broken too. Now inside the bus, Sul-hee asks the protagonist how he is feeling, and he says that it seems that the fever has gone and thanks her. Then inside the bus, Sul-hee calls out to the protagonist, asking if she can go to his house, and embarrassed he says that it's okay since there's no one at home. At that moment, Sul-hee blushes with this fact, thinking if she sweated today and what color her panties are and how Chan-woo can invite her without having anyone at his house. Looking at him, wondering if he didn't think she would make the first move. Then they arrive at Chan-woo's stop, saying that the house is close to the bus stop and that she doesn't need to go with him, but Sul-hee insists on going and he accepts. It's an afternoon with a nice weather, and Sul-hee asks if his parents are working, and Chan-woo says yes and that his sister is at school. Surprised, Sul-hee asks if he has a sister, and he says yes and that she's younger, and they enter his building while talking. Calling his elevator, the protagonist is serious. He looks back and thanks Sully. She says yes and that he owes her and says she'll see him after he rests a little. Then silence takes over, and Chan-woo invites her to come in and have a drink before going. Fixing her hair, Sul-hee is interested in the invitation. But her sister opens the door, breaking the whole mood, and the protagonist says he'll see her later, and Sul-hee says goodbye. Her sister asks why she's leaving, and the protagonist says it's her fault, and her sister says she's home because it's a school holiday. That's it for now, guys. If you want part 2, leave a like and comment asking for part 2. Remember to subscribe too. Until next time.